Hello friends, today we are going to see how to set up VPN connection between AWS and Google Cloud. So let's get started. So here is the link, or here is the documentation where you can read all about how to set up the whole connection between AWS and Google Cloud VPN connection. And it also shows you the architecture diagram of how it works, and also has step-by-step instructions of how to set it up. Most of these instructions are from the CLI, so you should be good. But if you want to follow along the tutorial that I have created here, you can do that. There are few steps that we are going to differ from what the documentation says, not too much, just a little bit, just to make things work. So we are going to look at how to set up Google Cloud VPC, how to set up VPC in AWS, how to what kind of settings we need to do between both of them, and get the whole thing working. So if you want, you can read about this document. I will highly recommend you to read this documentation here, and I will put the link of this documentation in the video description. So first things first, we are going to set up a new VPC. Before we even do that, we are going to set up a brand new project in GCP, and we will start from there. Okay, so I'm in GCP console and I'm going to create a new project, and we are going to name this project AWS GCP VPN demo. That is good enough, and we are going to click on create. Now we are going to select the project, and now we are going to set up a VPC here. So let's go to VPC section and click on VPC networks and enable the Compute Engine API. Once your Compute Engine API is enabled, you will see that there is a default VPC. We are going to create a different VPC and only gonna create one subnet. In the reason we are gonna create a new VPC is because we want to keep our our scope smaller, so we understand what actually is happening, right? So we click on create VPC network, and we are gonna name this VPC AWS GCP VPN demo, and description if you want to put something. Subnets, we are going to keep custom, and we are going to actually create one subnet, and we are going to name it subnet AWS GCP VPN. Actually, we are going to just name it subnet US East 1. That's the region we are going to create the subnet. So just for us to know which region this subnet belongs to, we are going to put it in the name, and the region we select US East 1. IP address range 10.0.0.0/24, and everything else is good. Click on done. Dynamic routing mode, we are going to make it global, and we are going to click on create. Okay, so our VPC is created. Next thing we want to do is we want to create some firewall rules. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we click on firewall here, and you see there are 4 rules already in here. They actually belong to the default network. We are not using default network, we are using a different network, I mean VPC. So we are going to create 3 or 2 rules here, and I will tell you which rule is going to do what. So let's click on create firewall rule, and this one we are going to name it allow ICMP. This rule we are going to allow anybody to ping our instances. The instances that we create in this network, we want anybody to ping it. so that when we do the test, once everything is done, we can prove that our VPN connection is working. Direction of traffic, leave it ingress. Action on match, allow. Tags, targets should be all instances in the network. Source IP range filter, we are going to say IP ranges, and the source IP ranges from where we want to allow pings to come from. We can say anywhere. Anybody who pings our system should be able to get the response back. And no second source filter. In the protocols, we will say specified protocols and ports. In the other protocol checkbox, we select the checkbox and we put ICMP here. We don't need to put anything other than ICMP, and we click on create. Okay, so that rule is created. Now we want to create one more rule. This we will say allow SSH from console. And we are going to select the network, and everything else we will leave as is. Target all instances in the network. Source filter IP range. Now, which IP addresses do we need to use? We do not want to allow 0000/0. We don't want to allow everybody or anybody to just SSH into our system. We only want to allow ourselves, so we can log in through SSH using GCP console. For that IP address range, there is an article here called using IAP for TCP forwarding, and there is an IP address range here. I'm gonna put the link in the description. So you just take this IP address range and you paste it here. These are the only IP addresses that GCP will use whenever it is trying to connect to whenever you try to connect to your instance using SSH from the console. And in the specified ports, we only want to allow 22. And we click on create. So now we have our firewall rules created. What we are gonna do next is we are actually going to AWS, and we are gonna set up a VPC there, and we will move forward from there. Okay, so now I'm in AWS console, and I'm gonna click VPC, or I can just type in here VPC, and I can go do it that way. And you can see that there is one VPC, that's the default VPC that comes with the account. We are not going to use this. We are going to create a new VPC, like I said, so we understand what the scope is and how things are working. So let's click on create VPC, and we are going to name this VPC AWS GCP VPN, and the CEDAR block range is going to be 10.1.0.0/16. That's the range for the CEDAR block, and we are going to create subnets after that, and leave everything as is, and let's click on create VPC. Okay, so our VPC is created. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to create one subnet. So you click on subnets, and you can see we have 4 subnets already here. These are the subnets that are associated with the default VPC, and they are created by default. We are going to create a new subnet, and we are going to select the VPC that we just created, and you can see the CEDAR range block here, and the subnet name, we are going to name this subnet US East 1. That's because I'm in the North Virginia region here. And availability zone, you can leave it no preference, which is okay, or you can pick one. I'm gonna just pick one. And the CEDAR block, or sorry, the CEDAR block range for this particular subnet is going to be 10.1.0.0/24. That's my subnet range. for this one subnet, and I'm gonna click on create subnet, and I have a subnet created here. Okay, next thing what we want to do is we want to go to the route tables. Now the moment we created a VPC, it created the route table for us, so but it did not associate any subnet. So let's rename this to route table AWS VPC AWS GCP VPC. That's the VPC this route table belongs to, and you can see that the subnet association, there is no subnet association, and subnets without the explicit associations are here. So you're gonna click on edit subnet associations, select that, and we click on save association. And now if you select that, you can see that there is a subnet associated with this. And if you click on routes, you will see that there is a route, local route, which says that route everything that is within this CW block range to the local VPC, local network. From here, what we are going to do is we are going to create an internet gateway. Okay, to create the internet gateway, we click on internet gateways, and you see there is already one internet gateway here, but it is associated with the default VPC. So we click on create internet gateway, and we say IGW AWS GCP VPN, and we click on create internet gateway. Once that is done, we have to attach that to a VPC. Click on attach to a VPC and select the VPC that we created in the previous step. Click on attach internet gateway, and that is done for the internet gateway. Now let's go to the route table and see what happened here. So when you go to routes, you can see there is one route here which is for local. We need to add one more route here so we can associate our internet gateway. So we say any IP address, and we say internet gateway, and that's the internet gateway, and we click on save changes. And that is all for attaching the internet gateway and changing the route. Okay, one thing we want to do is we want to go to VPC. We select our VPC, and you can see here that it says DNS host names are disabled. So we want to change that, and we want to enable that. So we click on actions, and we click on edit DNS host names, and we select enable, save changes. So with that, our AWS side of setup for now is done, and what we will do is we will now go to our GCP site and continue there. Okay, so I go back to my GCP console, and I click on the hamburger menu, and I scroll down to hybrid connectivity and click on cloud routers. And I'm going to start by creating a cloud router. I'm going to name this cloud router AWS GCP VPN, and the network we just created here, region US East 1, and Google ASN I'm gonna put 65420, and I'm going to click on advertise all subnets visible to the cloud router. I'm going to leave that checked and click on create. Okay, so our cloud router is created. The next thing we want to do is we want to set up the VPN connection. So we click on VPN and we click on create VPN connection, and there are two options, high availability VPN and classic VPN. classic VPN is being deprecated, so we are not gonna see how that works. It's not gonna be useful. What we will do is we will go through the high availability VPN setup, and we click on continue. And the VPN gateway name, we are gonna give this VPN gateway AWS GCP network, and the region US East 1, and we click on create and continue. Now this is a wizard. If you make a mistake, it's okay, you can always cancel it and just start by adding the tunnels. But what happens here is it gives us two interfaces because we selected high availability VPN option. So what we need to now do is we now need to go to AWS and we need to do some setup there. So let's go ahead and see what we need to do in AWS console. Okay, so we are in AWS console now, and we are still in the same VPC section here, and we scroll down and we click on virtual private network customer gateways, and we click on create customer gateway. We are gonna name it the reason we are gonna put 1 at the end is because we have two interfaces in GCP here. So we are gonna create one customer gateway for each of those interfaces. Routing, we are gonna select dynamic. BGP ASN, it is going to be the same ASN that we put when we were in GCP. So that was 65420. IP address, we come to GCP console and we copy the first interface and we paste it, and rest everything we keep as is, and we click on create customer gateway. Okay, so the customer gateway is created. We are gonna create one more. Two. Routing dynamic 65420 is the same ASN that we did in GCP, and the IP address we are going to select the second interface, copy and paste it, and leave everything as is. Click on create. Close it. Okay, now both of our customer gateways are created. Let's do virtual private gateways. Okay, so click on virtual private gateways, click on create virtual private gateway. The name tag, we are gonna say VPG AWS GCP. There is only one virtual private gateway. We want to have custom ASN 64512. Whatever ASN you want to give here, just make sure it is not the same ASN that we used in the previous step, 65412. Make sure this is different from that ASN number. So this is 64512 and the other one was 65412, and that is good. So we will click on create virtual private gateway, and virtual private gateway is created, but it is detached. We have to attach it to a VPC, and we click on attach to VPC, and we select the VPC. We say yes, attach. It is still attaching. In about a couple of seconds it will become available, but while that is happening, what we want to do is we want to go to our VPC and sorry, we want to go to our route table and we want to make one change there. So click on route tables, select the route table that we created in the earlier step, go to something called route propagation, and you come here and you will see that it has this virtual private gateway already associated here. So you click on edit route propagation and you say enable and save it. So there is one setting we can only do after we create virtual private gateway. So once that is done, what we are going to do is we are going to set up site-to-site VPN connection. Okay, so let's click on site-to-site VPN connections and let's create VPN connection. So we have to create two VPN connections. So we are going to name this VPN AWS GCP 1. Remember, we have two interfaces, so we can create up to two VPN connections here. And virtual private gateway, if you are using transit gateway, you can just provide your transit gateway ID here. We are using virtual private gateway, so we will select the virtual private gateway here. Customer gateway existing, remember we have two customer gateways. I made a mistake in naming them, so let's select the first customer gateway. Route options dynamic is good. IP version for the tunnel, inside the tunnel IPv4. Leave the local IPv4 and remote IPv4 network CEDAR blocks empty. Next we have to configure tunnels. So here you can see there are tons of options here. We don't need all of them, and not all of them are supported by GCP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the settings that do not apply to our VPN connection. So for the encryption algorithm, I'm gonna leave AES 256 selected. For the integrity algorithm, I'm gonna leave SHA 256 selected. For the group numbers, I'm going to leave just 14 here and unselect everything else. Same thing for phase 2. And for the IKE version, I'm gonna say IKE v2. Now we have to do this setting for all the 4 tunnels, 2 for VPN 1 and 2 for the VPN 2 that we create. So I'm going to just speed up the video every time I'm making that change. So I'm gonna configure tunnel 2 options here. Okay, so our options for tunnel 1 look more or less same, not more or less same, look exactly the same as tunnel 2. Again, for algorithm AES 256, for integrity algorithms SHA-2 256, for phase 1 DH group numbers 14, for phase 2 14, and IKE version IKE v2. Same settings are here. Looks good. So let's click on create VPN connection. Now let's set up second VPN connection. I'm going to actually copy this name so that I don't mess up, and I'm going to name this 2 virtual private gateway. We only have one. Customer gateway ID, we will select 2 because in the previous one we selected 1. Routing options dynamic, IP version inside the tunnel IPv4, and then let's edit the tunnel options. Okay, so tunnel 1 options look the way we did it for the VPN connection 1. Let's change the tunnel 2 options. Okay, they all look good. So click on create VPN connection. So VPN connections are going to show up pending. Tunnels, you will see the tunnels are down. IPsec is down because we haven't connected them to our GCP counterpart tunnels yet. So before we do that, let's download configuration files. So for each of these VPN connections that we created here, we have to download configuration file. So I'm going to download configuration file for one, and for the configuration I will say generic, and platform also generic, software also agnostic, vendor agnostic, and click on download. I'm going to rename it to 1 minus, so I know that which one is 1, which one is 2. I'm going to click on save. Next, I will download configuration files for VPN connection 2, and generic, vendor agnostic, download, name it to 2. Okay, now we have the files that we need to download. We needed to download. Now we have to go back to GCP and configure our GCP site. Okay, so let's go to our GCP site and we click on peer VPN gateway and we say create new peer VPN gateway. We are just continuing the same wizard that we started earlier. Now here we are going to name this peer VPN gateway AWS GCP VPN, and we will select 4 interfaces, and we are going to open the configuration files and start looking at the IP addresses that AWS gave us. So that's our first configuration file, and there is our second configuration file. So we are gonna keep going back and forth in both of them, and let's configure these settings here. So for the interface 0 IP address, we will go to IPsec tunnel 1. We are in the configuration file 1, IPsec tunnel 1, scroll down to setting number 3, which says tunnel interface configuration. We take the outside IP address of virtual private gateway. So we copy that and we paste it here. We scroll down in the same file for IPsec tunnel 2, setting number 3, tunnel interface configuration, outside IP address, virtual private gateway. Copy that, paste it here. Let's go to the file number 2, IPsec tunnel 1, scroll down, setting number 3, tunnel interface configuration, virtual private gateway, outside IP address. Copy that, paste it here. And IPsec tunnel 2 for the connection 2, scroll down to setting number 3, tunnel interface configuration, and copy the outside IP address, virtual private gateway, and paste it here, and we click on create. Okay, so our peer VPN gateway has been created, which gives us 4 tunnels, and we have to select cloud router here. So we select the cloud router. Now let's configure our tunnels. Okay, so let's click on VPN tunnel. We are going to name this VPN tunnel 1 of 1, IKE version v2, IKE pre-shared key. For that, let's go back to our file here. So we are again in the file number 1, and we scroll down IPsec tunnel 1, and you will see here something called pre-shared key. So we have to copy this and we paste it here and we click on done. Let's do it for tunnel 2. Name it VPN tunnel 2. I messed up the name here. I want to just fix that real quick. VPN tunnel 1 of 2. Pre-shared key. Let's go back to the file, scroll down. We will go to IPsec tunnel number 2, pre-shared key, copy the whole thing and paste it here. Click done. Let's do it for tunnel number 3, which we are gonna name VPN tunnel 2 of 1, pre-shared key. Now we are in the file number 2. Scroll all the way up, make your way down for IPsec tunnel 1, pre-shared key, copy that, paste it here, click done. And the last one, we say VPN tunnel 2 of 2, pre-shared key. We scroll down and we go to IPsec tunnel number 2, pre-shared key, and we copy that thing. Done. Click on create and continue. Okay, so our tunnels are created, but we still need to configure BGP session. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's click on configure for the tunnel 1 of 1, and we are gonna name this BGP for tunnel 1 of 1, peer ASN. For peer ASN, we are gonna go back to our AWS console. We are gonna click on virtual private gateways and we are gonna copy 64512 or whatever ASN you have here and paste it here. We're gonna leave advertised route priority as is. Now the cloud router BGP IP, and we have to configure BGP peer IP. So where do we get this cloud router BGP IP? Again, we go to our files and we are in the file number 1, IPsec tunnel 1. Scroll down for the same setting, number 3, tunnel interface configuration. This time we have to put inside IP addresses, not the outside IP addresses, inside IP addresses. So we get 2 IP addresses, one for customer gateway, one for virtual private gateway, and they are always going to end with /30. We don't need to put /30 in there. All we need is IP address. We don't need the range. So we customer gateway inside IP address maps to cloud router BGP IP, and virtual private gateway inside IP address maps to BGP peer IP. Don't put where one does not belong, otherwise it is going to fail and it is going to break. So make sure that you map customer gateway inside IP address with cloud router BGP IP, and you map virtual private gateway inside IP address with BGP peer IP, and that is good for our tunnel 1. So I'm just gonna copy peer ASN because I have to copy it all the time. Click on save and continue. Click on configure, and we are going to click on, and we are going to name it as BGP for tunnel 1 of 2. 64512 is our peer ASN. Again, cloud router BGP IP. Let's scroll down in the same file 1. Let's go to IPsec tunnel number 2. Scroll down and inside IP address customer gateway, take that, put it in the cloud router BGP IP, and inside IP address virtual private gateway, put it in the BGP peer IP, and click on save and continue. Same thing, let's configure for tunnel 2 of 1. Six 64512. This time we will go to file number 2 all the way up, IPsec tunnel 1, scroll down to setting number 3, and inside IP address customer gateway maps to cloud router BGP IP, and virtual private gateway maps to BGP peer IP. Continue, configure, and IPsec tunnel number 2, scroll down, setting number 3, tunnel interface configuration, inside IP address customer gateway IP maps to cloud router IP, and BGP peer IP maps to virtual private gateway IP. I didn't name it, so I'm gonna name it BGP for tunnel 2 of 2, 64512, and that looks good. So I'm just gonna click on save and continue, and I'm gonna click on save BGP configuration and see what happens. And you can see that everything is green. So BGP status is green, VPN tunnel status is green. Sometimes it takes a while. I got lucky, everything was very instantaneous for me. So I'm just gonna click on OK, and let's see here. So VPN tunnel status is established, BGPN status is also established. So this is on GCP side. Let's go to AWS side and see what happens here. So we go to site-to-site VPN connections, and we click on the first one, and our tunnels are still down. We click on 2, and our tunnels are up for 2, but our tunnels are down for 1. So it's probably gonna take a while they come up, but they will come up. Eventually they will come up, as long as you did not, or we did not, mess something up. As long as we did not mess anything up, they will all show as up. And I don't know why this is down, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna come up any second. So I'm not gonna wait for it to become available. I'm pretty sure I did not mess up any settings, so it's just taking its time. And it's up. You can see both of them are up here, and both of them are up here. So let's test it. Why did we go through all this to set this whole thing up? That is because we want to communicate between AWS and GCP using private IP addresses, not the public IP addresses. So what we are going to do is we are going to create an Ec2 instance on AWS, and then we are going to create a virtual machine on GCP, and then we are going to ping each other using private IP address, not the public IP address. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's create Ec2 instance first. So for that, we just search for Ec2, click on it, click on instances, and we say launch instances. We will select Linux, Amazon Linux, T2 Micro. We are going to leave everything as is. Sorry, we are going to change the VPC to US East 1 subnet. We will also change the subnet to US East 1, and we will leave everything as is. So we changed VPC. There is only one subnet in the VPC, so we are good there. and you can see the subnet setting, auto assign public IP is disabled. I'm going to just enable that so I can show you something that I'm planning to show you something, and that is good. And click on next. Storage is good. Add the tags. If you want to add the tag, just add the tag name, test VPN connection, and configure security group. Here we are going to say security group only allow ICMP, and in the protocol we will say allow all. Port range, no need to specify. Source, custom, we are going to say anybody who pings it, just give them the reply. We are good. We are not opening port 22. Make sure you do not keep port 22 open. Just make sure you select the type as custom ICMP, and you click on review and launch. And you click on launch, and we are going to choose an existing key pair. That will be VPN demo AWS KP. If you don't have a key pair, you can just say create new key pair and you can download the key pair, but we have a key, so we are going to just use that and say acknowledge and launch the instances. And it is going to launch the instance. We only have one instance here. It's going to take a couple of minutes to do that. While that is happening, we will go to our GCP and we are going to create a compute engine instance here. Okay, we will click on create instance, and we are going to leave the name as is. We are going to change the region to US East 1 because that is where our VPC is. US East 1B is our zone, doesn't matter which zone. And we are going to change this to E2 micro, that's the smallest one, and we are going to change the boot disk to Ubuntu, and service account is good. We are going to expand this networking section here. We are going to click on networking, and we are going to change the network to VPC AWS, and there is only one subnet, so it just by default will pick it up, and external IP and everything it will give us. So we will have two instances, one in AWS, one in GCP. So let's click on create, and remember we have enabled public IP and private IP both, right? So what we want to do is we want to test what is happening here, right? So let's click on our instance, and you can see we get private IP and we get public IP, right? So let's copy the public IP, and so I'm on my local system here, so I'm just gonna say ping using public IP, and you can see I can get the response back, right? Now let me try doing it with the private IP, and you will see that it's not gonna work because I can't reach from my local system, right? Because there is no connection between my local system and AWS system using private IP. There is no VPN between my system and AWS. There is a VPN between GCP and AWS, so we will test that. Now let's go back to our GCP, and we have same thing, right? External IP and internal IP. So let's copy the external IP first and do the ping from the local system using public IP. It works. Now let's try that using internal IP. It's not gonna work. Again, there is no VPN connection between my machine and GCP. So I have no internet, I have no VPN connectivity between any of the cloud from my local machine, but I do have connectivity between them, right? So that's what we want to test. So you click on instance 1 in GCP and you click on SSH. So this is why we added that that firewall rule that allows connection from IAP, and that's what is happening here. So it's gonna, okay, so now we are in we are on the virtual machine on GCP. So let's test it here. So this is our Ec2 instance private IP address. So if our VPN connection is working, then we should be able to get the reply back, and we are getting the reply back using the private IP. And we can definitely get the reply back from public IP. It's also gonna work. Sorry, that was my local. So you can see we can access this particular Ec2 instance on AWS from GCP using private IP as well as public IP. Now let's do the same test on AWS side, right? So we have this AWS system here and we need to SSH into this system. So we will click on the instance ID and we will say connect, and it will give us this example command here. So we will just copy that, and I will go where this key is. Okay, this is where my key is, and you can see this is what my key name is. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. Say yes. I have not opened a security group. I have not opened port 22 to connect from my local machine. So let me go back here, click on security, go to the security group. You can see our security group right now only allows ICMP from anywhere. So we will click on edit inbound rules. We will say add rule, and we will say SSH port 22. In the source we are gonna say my IP. Do not make the source as 0000. Don't do that. Choose my IP, otherwise not good. Yeah. Okay, so I can SSH to this system from my IP address. So I'm going to try it one more time, and I'm in. Okay, so right now I'm on my Ec2 instance, and I'm going to ping my GCP virtual machine from here. So I'm gonna go back, and I'm going to copy internal IP. I am on EC2 here, and you can see I can get the reply back from internal IP. Of course I can get the reply back from using external IP as well. So that's it for the demo. As you can see, we were able to set up the VPN connection between both the clouds.